I can't help myself. I said I'd do some writing and stuff, and then I'll go to bed, but I want to play more of this game still. So, may as well just embrace the urge, I say. So let's go. Just as promised, we're exploring the undersea grotto now. There are the quests and stuff, but I think I'll hold off on them for now. Because I want to. Yeah, I can at least do this quest.
This video was sponsored by Coursera. In the 1990s, the Gates Foundation, along with several other nonprofits, began to advocate for breaking up larger schools into smaller ones. And the reason for this is that they noticed several of the smaller schools were outperforming pretty much all of the larger ones. Well, it turns out this actually is the case pretty much anywhere that you look. In fact, a lot of good things tend to happen to areas with smaller populations. Like the safest towns tend to be those with smaller populations. Or the states that have the lowest percentage of people with brain cancer also have smaller populations, and we could just keep going. But there's also something I'm not telling you, and that's that several of the lowest performing schools have small student bodies. And the most dangerous towns tend to be those with a smaller population, and the states that have the highest percentage of people with brain cancer tend to have smaller populations. So what's really going on here? Well, this has to do with the law of large numbers, which says in terms of percentages, more extreme things happen when we look at smaller populations. For example, if I flipped a coin 4 times, it would not be surprising if 75% of them landed heads, or even 100%. These are extreme compared to the 50% expected
Yeah, I don't
outcome,
like this
but it would not
instrument.
take long for anyone flipping a
The
coin
one
to
that's
encounter
playing
this.
the super fast
However, if you flipped
notes.
a coin 1,000 times,
It
would
sounds
take
a lot
of
more
trials before you got
attacky.
75%
The
heads.
attack, they made
So
it
when you
a
flip
lot
coin a few
weaker
times, the percent that comes up heads
for
can be
this
kind of
rendition,
chaotic,
and I
bouncing
don't like
around
it.
50%.
All of the
I mean,
instruments
after one flip,
have
you
a
could
lot
have
less
only
attack.
100 or 0% that came up heads. It's far from the
I
mean,
know I'm
but
using
after more
technical
trials, the
music
outcome
jargon
tends towards
that
the
doesn't
expected
make
value
a
of
lot of sense
50-50.
for people
So when
probably.
we analyze small schools, it's like looking at
I
this
don't know
side
how
of the
else to
graph,
explain it.
assuming these students are selected randomly. You're just going to get those schools that are way above the mean and some that are
I
way
honestly
below
think
the
it
mean.
was a bad
As
idea
the
to
population of the school
get the
grows
row
and you have
version
more
of
and more students from the
the
population, though,
arms.
the overall scores will approach whatever
Well,
the mean
it's
is.
too late now.
Now, I know many of you are probably saying, wait, it's not that simple because there are other factors to consider. And you're definitely right. Like with especially the private smaller schools, they may require you to do well in certain tests in order to get in. And if that's the case, that group of students will probably be just smarter on average. Or when looking at crime rates, we can't just ignore the poverty rates of that area and simply look at population size, since again, there are other factors to consider. But it is true that when you're looking at those smaller populations, you're just likely
Why
going
would
to
you
get
do
more
that?
of those extreme outcomes. And when the Gates
Oh!
Foundation and all those other nonprofits put this to work, it turned out to be a failure. It wasn't because small schools are inherently worse or no different than larger ones. Rather, education is more nuanced
Yeah, I
than simply
should
looking at
get
school size.
the
And on a large
row
scale, it's
version of
better for those
Refresh.
funds to go elsewhere. But misinterpreting why several of the smaller schools were in fact outperforming the larger ones had already cost these organizations about $1 billion. So now after that failure, for example, the Gates Foundation is more focused on putting money towards math and science programs, improving instruction, and more like that. Now for this
Nice.
next story, instead of ending with a lesson, I'm going to start with it. And the lesson is, do not talk about percentages of numbers when the values that you're talking about can be negative. I got that lesson from this book here, which I highly recommend if you have not read it, but the author gives some great examples as to why this lesson is so important. Imagine you're running a clothing store where you maybe sell t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, shoes, and pants. Now let's say your net profit for a given month is $10,000, and 90% of that came from t-shirts. So my question to you is, how do you interpret this? It seems like t-shirts are really what's working for us, so maybe we should focus just on that, honestly. But what if I then told you that sweatshirts made up 70% of our profits? Well, now you're probably thinking, hey, there's that American education system at work, brought to you by those who still use the Fahrenheit scale. But I promise these numbers are technically accurate. In fact, I'll keep going. I'll add that hats account for 30% of profits, shoes for 40%, and pants 50%. So how is this possible? Well, it's simply due to the fact that a business will include losses which we haven't considered yet. Let's say rent, advertising, cost of shipping the product, and all those expenses add up to $18,000 for the month. Well, now all the numbers make perfect sense. The t-shirts were 90% of the $10,000, which means we made $9,000 from those. The sweatshirts made up 70% of $10,000 or $7,000, and we just continued. That means our net sales were $28,000, then minus our expenses leaves us with $10,000. The numbers match up, and the percentages are technically correct with respect to that net result. If you want to talk about these percentages with respect to just your sales,
really
where there are no negatives, then these would be the values, which makes way more sense. Now, I know plenty of you are saying, well, I wouldn't misinterpret the numbers like this, but hopefully you can see when it comes to the general population, it probably wouldn't be that hard to misinform people, or just give them the numbers and have them misinterpret it for themselves. In fact, here are two examples where this misinterpretation has come up in
I'll hit Medica 2
In
first,
June
he'll go soon enough.
2011, an article was released in Wisconsin, celebrating the great
as
work
well.
of their governor at the time. Turns out during a recent month, there was a net increase of 18,000 jobs throughout the entire nation, and 9,500 of those came from Wisconsin. So politicians from the state praised this, saying, hey, over 50% of nationwide job growth happened just in Wisconsin alone. Again, this is technically right, but not in the way we think. Because guess what? Massachusetts created 10,400 jobs in the month, accounting for about 58% of total job growth. In fact, just to emphasize how pointless these numbers can be, California added 28,800 jobs that month, meaning 160% of that net job growth happened in California. See, this clearly becomes nonsense because we can make the numbers say anything, and that's because 18,000 was the net increase. Missouri, in fact, was one state that lost 12,900 jobs.
I picked the brown one
Virginia lost
first originally.
14,600, and
I can't believe it was Ethelred that chose it. The wildling of all people.
But as we've seen, it's bad to refer to that value when talking about percentages. And politicians ran with this number. In fact, a representative went in front of an audience celebrating the job growth, saying, well, something we are doing here must be working. But it doesn't stop there because another very misleading number showed up in the presidential election between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. In April 2012, Mitt Romney tweeted that 92.3% of people who lost their job under Obama's presidency were
I
women.
should punch them.
He also emphasized it in a speech around the same time.
These are just some statistics which show just how severe the war on women has been by virtue of the president's failed policies. The number of jobs, this is an amazing statistic, the percentage of jobs lost by women in the president's 3 years, 3.5 years. 92.3% of all the jobs lost during the Obama years have been lost by women.
Now, I know at this point I sound pretty repetitive, but although this number is technically true, it's just not saying what we think it is. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in January 2009, when Obama took office, total employment was just over 133 million. By March 2012, right before Mitt Romney published his tweet, total employment was about 132.8 million, a net loss of 740,000 jobs. The employment stats for women, on the other hand, went from about 66.1 million to 65.4 million, a loss of 683,000 jobs. We do the division and we get that exact figure of 92.3%, but that tells us nothing about what happened during that time. When we look at the numbers, we find that from the beginning of our interval, or January 2009, until February 2010, men lost way more jobs than women, while from February 2010 until the end of our time window, men gained just about the same amount back, whereas women didn't gain quite as much. So simply saying that 92.3% figure is pretty misleading. In fact, there was a portion of time where men had a net gain in jobs, but this was after suffering millions of job losses, while women had a net loss in that same window because they didn't suffer as much beforehand. With these figures, you could argue that women account for 3,000% of job losses, which makes no sense, even though the math kind of works out. So you see, just pick the window of time you want, and you can pretty much make the data say whatever you want. Okay, now we're going to switch gears to a scenario regarding baseball players. Let's say there are two players that don't necessarily play for the same team, but they have had the exact same number of at-bats per given season against pitchers of the same skill level. Now I'm going to use not very realistic baseball numbers here, by the way, but it'll get the point across. So for the first half of the season, let's say player 1 had a batting average of 85%, while player 2 had a batting average of 90%. In the second half of the season, player 1 batted 50%, while player 2 batted 60%. And again, they had the exact same total number of at-bats. Now I think most people looking at these numbers would of course say player 2 is the better player, which is why it might be surprising if I said player 1 is in fact better and had more hits overall than player 2. But it's absolutely possible. The trick here is that I did not say they had the same number of at-bats for both the first and second
look how
half of
much
the
HP
season.
that guy
Just
has.
the same
What
amount
the
overall.
hell?
So let's say for the first half, player 1
I
had
think
20
they made.
at-bats,
I think they
17
may
of
have
which
made
were hits,
summoners
leaving
to
the
over 2
85% I said earlier.
in general. It
Then
seems.
during the second half, they had 10 at-bats, 5 of which were hits, which of course yields 50%. That means out of 30 total at-bats, they had 22 hits. Now for player 2, let's say for the first half of the season they had 10 at-bats, 9 of which were hits, giving us 90%.
I wonder if I can use
And
a
for the
card.
second half they had 20 at-bats, 12 of which were hits, giving us 60%. This player 2 has also had a total of 30 at-bats, but only 21 of them were hits, which means their overall percentage was slightly lower than player 1's. This is Simpson's paradox, something I mentioned in a previous video in regards to the acceptance rates of men and women at UC Berkeley. But as you can see, this paradox does show up in other places. And it comes up when trends seen in different groups of data tend to change or disappear when you analyze everyone or everything as a whole.
I mean, I already know how summons work by
David
this point,
Justice
but I
of the
just want to
Atlanta Braves
test.
had a higher
stuff.
batting average than Derek Jeter in both 1995 and 1996.
I can get away with not
Overall, when you look
dismissing
at both
beasts.
years combined,
I
Derek
can
Jeter still
heal.
had a higher batting average. But the
That
consequence
is
of
kinda
this can get
sad,
much
but-
more serious when looking at medical treatments. Another famous
Obviously, I
case
still
of this is with
wanna make
regards
sure
to
I
kidney
don't.
stone treatments, actually.
Since
where
dismiss
two
beast
certain types
is
of
always
treatments were
fixed
tested
by.
against one another
The fact that
for
Lion
large
costs
kidney
more
stones and
really
small
doesn't
kidney
mean
stones.
much.
Overall, treatment B was better.
And I guess
When
it means
looking at large and
mistakes.
small kidney stones individually,
What I stand to
treatment A
lose
came
if
out
I
ahead
don't
both
dismiss
times.
beast at the correct time is a bit.
See, here the thing is,
Higher,
it's
but-
the overall numbers that are misleading. Because this table says that treatment A is more effective for small stones and also for large ones. It's the treatment you're definitely going to prefer. But the misinterpretation comes from the fact that since treatment A is better, they use it for more of those large stone cases that are more serious. Yet for more serious cases, any treatment will just be less successful than when used on something more minor, as you can see by the smaller percentages on bottom compared to those on top. So you're using a better treatment more often on kidney stones that are harder to treat, and thus you get this seemingly paradoxical result. See, Simpson's paradox isn't really a paradox. It just shows how easy it can be to misinterpret data when it's presented like you've seen here. So when we look at data the wrong way, we can be not only sort of wrong, but we can come to conclusions that are exactly the opposite of the ones the numbers are really telling. In fact, this is another quick example. During the First World War, they found that incorporating metal helmets on soldiers increased the number of people who were hospitalized with head injuries. Looking at this, someone could definitely make the very weird assumption that helmets cause more head injuries. But remember, never be too quick to assume that correlation equates to causation. Because before helmets were incorporated, most people who suffered head injuries, like from a gunshot, died from it, obviously. So they were completely removed from the equation, whereas with helmets, people had a higher chance to survive an injury to the head, and thus you have more head injuries in the hospital. I'm pretty sure they didn't remove the helmets due to this finding, but this example does highlight how completely counterintuitive the results can seem when you don't think enough about how the data was obtained. This was an example of survivorship bias, a logical error that occurs when you overlook a certain group of people, like those who died from head injuries. There are several more examples of this that I'm saving for an
There's
upcoming
actually
video
nothing.
but the idea
I
just fits so
actually
well
can't
here,
go
I want
wrong
to
with
include
using
one
summon
example.
lion.
Now, being able to analyze data and then extract useful
And I like how the
information
provocation
and meaning
takes
from it is an
place,
extremely valuable
activates
skill to have. In fact, there are
immediately.
people who have entire careers based on using powerful computer systems and efficient algorithms to solve problems by analyzing large amounts of data. And this is known as data science. Although this video wasn't about data science, hopefully it highlighted the importance of looking at data and numbers in the right way. But if you'd like to learn more about all the technical information regarding data science, one of the most high-paying jobs there is right now, you can do so at Coursera, the sponsor of today's video. The classes they're sponsoring today are some of their most popular, and this isn't just one course, but rather an entire specialization consisting of several courses meant to take you from beginner to someone with a solid foundation in data science topics. This set of courses starts with teaching you how to program in R, one of the most popular languages for statistical computing and graphics. This is then followed with lectures about gathering data properly and how to handle large data sets that can come from a wide variety of sources. After a few weeks, they cover more of the mathematical side of things, including probability, Bayes' theorem, p-values, permutation tests, and more, to give you that required statistical background. And then you'll get to put that knowledge to work with practical machine learning, which includes forecasting, model-based prediction, and much more. All of these courses come with built-in lectures, quizzes, example problems, and various projects to give you the hands-on experience, just like you're in a normal class setting. And several people who complete these courses report starting a new career or just getting a tangible career benefit as a direct result. So if you're interested and want to support the channel, you can click the links below and get started immediately. Otherwise, I'm going to end that video there. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. This video was sponsored by Witness.
I can't believe I've been ignoring this guy's videos for a while now.
To start this
These
video,
are nice
you and I
videos.
are going to play a game. We'll try our best. Now, playing this game is fairly simple.
Although I just watch a whole bunch of redundant videos in a row now.
Red on the other. And at the same time, you and I are going to hold up both of our cards, and we can show whichever side we want. So based on the color combination that shows up and how we decide to play our cards, we are each going to get some amount of money. Now, here's the breakdown of those payouts.
Ah, it's this
I
guy.
happen to be showing the
I
same
wonder,
color regardless of what it is.
am I ready to deal with
You'll
him?
be awarded $5 and I will get nothing.
I don't
If I
think
show
this
green
team
and you
is
show red,
tough
then
enough
I
to
get
deal with
$5
him.
and you get nothing. But
So,
instead, I show red and you show green, then I get $3 and you get 2. The goal is to end up with the most amount of money possible, and we're going to play several rounds. Now, notice that overall this game is definitely in your favor. The numbers are almost symmetric, but there's that one instance where I should get $5 to make things even, but instead I get 3 while you still get 2.
alright, we got the
My
granted
question
attack.
to
Let's
you
go,
is, what
let's
would
go.
your strategy be to win this game over several rounds? Because by chance you should be able to, but how would you essentially guarantee it? Well, let's first look at how you should be seeing this game. Based on your payouts, it's definitely best for you to show green, because then when I play green, you'll win 5, and when I play red, you'll still win 2. Whereas I will get either 0 or 3 respectively, so overall you should come out ahead. Whereas when you play red, it's 50-50 odds for each of us to win $5. So here's where strategy kicks in. If you start just playing green every time, I'm simply going to play red every time because that's a 3-2 split payout. Thus I would win 3 every round while you win 2, and I obviously come out ahead. Now if you respond to that by saying, fine, you know what, I'll just randomly play green and red each about 50% of the time, because overall I'm favored to win. Then as a response, I will only show green every time. Thus half the time I win 5 and half the time you win 5. So a game that you should win instead comes out to 50-50 odds for each of us. Now of course if I start playing the same thing every time, you could counter that by switching up your bets, and it becomes this back and forth mind game. But let's not do that, because you can win this guaranteed in the long run by following a specific strategy. Now I'll just tell you the strategy is to play green 62.5% of the time, and red 37.5% of the time, and it should be random. Now, there is a range of percentages that give you the edge, but what you see
That's
here
the problem
is
with
what's
this
up.
enemy.
So now let's see why
It's
this
a crocodile, and
If I decide to show only green,
it can
the
sometimes randomly
60.5%
just decide to fuck you.
I will win nothing, and the 37.5%
Don't take that out of
of the time
context.
you play red, I will win 5. We do the math, and my expected outcome is $1.875.
It's
per
a
round.
random chance, so
$5 is awarded every round.
it's
That
a
means
random chance that he'll go for a
$5
super powerful
per round
attack
strategy.
that targets everyone in the
Green
party.
isn't in my interest, and I better try my luck with red.
So your only
Let's just do the
chance
math
of
again.
beating this guy
When
is
I
if you
play
have
red,
everyone
the
in your team
62.5%
have really
of the
good
time
defenses.
You play green, I win $3 from that mixed result.
Other than
And
that,
the other 37.5%
they
of
they
the
are
time
just
you
like
play
the
red, I win
hippos.
nothing.
Just the
If
damage,
you
just the
pick
numbers
again,
check.
and get the exact same numbers as before. So there's no color
So I'm
or
gonna
strategy
try it,
in my
why
favor.
not?
Whether I play green all the time, red all the time, or any mix, the expected payouts are always bigger for you. The real beauty of this strategy is you can tell me exactly what you're doing, and there's nothing I can do to improve my odds. Since that criteria is met, we have found what is called the equilibrium, or specifically the Nash equilibrium. Okay, technically we're only halfway there, because remember, everything I said about your strategy, you could say about mine. If I was playing each color half the time, you could just play only green and gain more of an edge than before. I'm not going to show the math, but for me to play optimally and reduce my losses, I would play green 37.5% of the time and red 62.5% of the time. The same numbers as you, but for different colors. If I'm doing that, we'd see the same chaos as before, but now there's nothing you can do to
Let's
it.
take out the most defensive characters we have.
Where even if we reveal our strategies to each other, the other person has no reason to do something else. Decades ago, it was discovered that, in fact, every finite game
I believe
in
Umam
chess
will finally
has at
find a
least
chance to
one
shine
Nash
here.
equilibrium. This equilibrium is typically not easy to find, and I don't think we know what it is for chess, actually. But either way, the interesting thing is that equilibrium actually isn't always the best outcome, even though it can still be the smartest move. Imagine a similar game, but this time if we hold up different colors, we get nothing. If we both hold up green, then you get $2 and I get $1.
Forgot what their
If we both
weakness
hold
is.
up red, I get $2 and you get $1. We play this several times and keep whatever money we win. Now this game is kind of weird when we don't allow for cooperation. For example, if you find I'm kind of being selfish and just holding up red every time, then you might as well hold up red every time too. It's better for me because I'm winning 2 while you win 1. But hey, it's better than you holding up green and us winning nothing. You have no reason to do anything else, and same goes for me. So we found a Nash equilibrium. But you could say the same thing about us both playing green. If you're showing green every time, then I might as well do the same, which means that's also a Nash equilibrium. But if we really played this game, what would you actually do? Might be tough to answer, but there is an incentive to randomize your play, especially when you're unsure of what the other player will do. The equilibrium for you is to play the color more beneficial to you, or green, 2/3 of the time, and then red 1/3 of the time. Because now there's nothing I can do to improve my expected outcome. If I only play green, I'll get $1 2/3 of the time, and if I only play red, I'll get $2 1/3 of the time. So no matter what I do, I'm expected to make about 66.6 cents per round. And for me, I should play red 2/3 of the time and green 1/3 of the time. Just the opposite of you. This here is another Nash equilibrium. The weird thing though is that it would actually be better for us to completely randomize her color
I
choices
really regret
and make it 50-50.
maxing out her
Because that would give us
provoke.
an expected payout of 75 cents
That was a
per
big
round
mistake
instead
I
of
never meant to
66.6
do.
cents. The problem is, if I knew you were picking colors with
Now it
50-50
costs
odds,
too much.
I would just always play the color more beneficial to me, aka red. Or I'd at least play it more often, because I'll win $2 more often than 1. So 50-50 odds is better for everyone, but it's not stable as it can incentivize the other person to change strategies. So hopefully you can see how this kind of math allows us to look at a game and its chaos in a different kind of way to create an optimal outcome for ourselves. Or
I just
even
realized they removed the
and although
the
math
switch
may
stab
seem one thing,
ability.
we also have to consider
What's up
the
with
human
that?
element
That was
that
actually a
some of
really
our
cool
opponents
ability.
sometimes do. Like, here's an example where knowing how well other people understand the game is key to winning. Let's say everyone watching this video has to pick a number between 0 and 100 inclusive. We will then find the average of everyone's guesses, and whoever picked the number closest to 2/3 of that average wins. So like if you say 34, and these are everyone else's inputs,
I may as well
then you would
increase
win,
her TP
because
by a
the
bunch.
average of all of these, including yours, would be 52, and 2/3 of that is just above 34, which you're closest to. So the question is, what would be the Nash equilibrium here? Well, since everyone has to pick a number between 0 and 100, we know 2/3 of the average cannot exceed 66.6, so there's really no point to put anything above that. But if everyone realizes that, then no one's going to put a number above 66.6, which means now 2/3 of the average cannot exceed 44.4. And again, if everyone realizes that, then no one's going to input a larger value. And if we continue this analysis, we'd eventually get down to 0, which is in fact the Nash equilibrium. Everyone should just say 0, and then no one has an incentive to change their answer. But the real question is, how deep are others going to see into this? Well, when this was actually implemented through an internet-based competition, people who picked 0 did not win. Instead, for this example, 21.6 was the winning number, which means the average input that was submitted was around 32. It's lower than 50, so there were players who seemed to have the right thinking. Most probably did not, or at least they didn't go far enough. However, after people play this game over and over, they do keep lowering their guesses until they all eventually reach 0. So it takes some learning, but equilibrium is eventually reached. now let's say a two-player game where betraying the other person is actually the key to making the most money, sort of. For this game, same as before, there are payouts for the color cards we show. If we show different colors, then the person who is showing green wins $100,000, while the other wins nothing. So why would anyone show red? Because if
Right,
you
I should
both
be paying
win,
attention to
you
the
both win
environment.
$10,000. If you both show
The
green,
secret path
you
is
win
still
$1,000.
colored blue,
You
so
only
it's
play
blue
this
on
once and
blue.
you cannot divide up the money
In the
after.
DS,
So what would you
it
guys
was
do
really
in
hard to
this
see,
game?
but
Let's
I mean,
say
it's
you
nice to
cooperate
know
with the
that
other person, that you guys
they
can talk
kept
and
it
figure out a strategy.
super hard to get to
What you'll likely
see.
come up with is both of you should just show red. That way you each get $10,000, no one will go home empty-handed, and hey, 10,000 each is better than 1,000. However, here's where the betraying part comes in. If you guys agree to show red, then it is now really in your interest to show green and basically screw over the other person. Because then you'd win $100,000 and the other would get nothing. And also remember, your opponent would be thinking the exact same thing. Okay, someone needs to get Mr. Beast to have strangers play this game with each other, because I'm betting we get some pretty good responses, and also possibly some fights. But either way, you guys let me know at least what you would do in this situation. Like, if I could offer these payouts and pick two of you at random and you'd never have to see each other again, would you
Here,
cooperate? Would you
here,
betray the other
slash,
person? Would you expect them to betray you? And so on.
nothing.
Anyway, getting back to the analysis, there's actually something hidden in the
Strike.
map, sort of. That's
Interesting.
easy to see, but also kind of weird at the same time. And that's that playing green is in fact always in your
Oh
best
my
interest,
goodness.
regardless of what the
Oh.
other person does. Like, let's say they show green. That means that you showing green wins you $1,000, and you showing red wins you $0, while the other person gets $100,000. So green is definitely the better choice here. If they show red and you show green, you win $100,000, but if you show red, you win $10,000. You're always worse off by showing red, and the same goes for the other person. You guys would both much rather show green, and that, in fact, is the Nash equilibrium. The weird part is that both of you showing red is still better for everyone compared to both showing green. The Nash equilibrium isn't the best payout, but by playing red, there is a real risk of betrayal unless you don't have a stable system.
There
If
it
you're
is.
thinking, wow, this game seems like quite the dilemma, then you're right. This is actually the prisoner's dilemma, probably the most famous game in game theory. Except instead of years you'll spend in
I know,
jail and
he was
confessing
talking
about
about the
crime, I
prisoners.
turned it into money and just showing a red and green card. The analysis is just about the same. Without cooperation, I would always show green, but when you can talk to the other person, it gets interesting. And it turns out they actually did a simulation of this years ago, but it was an iterated version where several teams wrote programs that would essentially play this game over and over, not just once. Because it wasn't a one-time play, solely playing the Nash equilibrium isn't what won, but rather it was programs that played the tit-for-tat strategy. A program playing this would start by cooperating, just like playing red and hoping to get the $10,000 payout for both people. They would then mimic the previous move of the other player. So if the other player first cooperated, then it would cooperate again. If at any point the other player betrayed and essentially showed green trying to get that $100,000 outcome, then for the next move, the tit-for-tat strategy would say to betray. And if the other person kept betraying, then so would the other program. And since cooperating is more beneficial than both playing the equilibrium, the strategy proved to be very strong. It not only has it been seen in computer code, but it was also seen in World War I, where any death by
Yeah,
an enemy
everyone hits
sniper would be
super hard.
retaliated, but periods of no death would be met with no retaliation. And thus there was an implied truce which helped create
I
peace
think
between
my
trenches.
overpowered strategies
This is
are
why
gonna
game
get
theories become so big.
a
You can
reality
almost
check.
analyze and understand
Now.
strategies and optimal outcomes in real-life scenarios.
It's already happening, in
Game theory can
fact.
be used to analyze international conflict and find best strategic plays for both
But it's
sides.
fine, we'll get
It's used a
Amrita's
lot in economics to
purchasable
analyze
soon
auctions,
enough
business mergers, or the fair
once we
division
get to
of
the next
assets.
floor.
And it's seen in Pursuit
For
of
now, I'm
Agent,
gonna use
where
it
each
then.
player wants to use best strategies to either catch the other or avoid being caught. So although game theory may not help you do any better at traditional games, it can really open your eyes to the mathematics of decision making and how to create optimal outcomes.
I keep
for
pressing M
yourself
to open
and
the
for others.
map for some reason out of instinct.
And before we end this,
Dang
I just
it.
want to thank Wix for sponsoring this video. One thing I've talked
Like,
about
too
in
much
another
Resident
video was how
Evil
during
and
my
stuff.
first job, I actually tried building a business on the side. And how during that time,
In
I taught
reality,
myself
what I
how to
want
write
to do is open
HTML,
the tab
CSS,
menu.
PHP, and JavaScript, so I could build a website. And let me tell you, that took a lot of time that could have easily
Here
been
goes.
saved. With Wix, anyone can build their own website for free, and no programming experience is required. You can start a blog,
forgot what their
online
weakness is.
store, a personalized
I think it's
portfolio
bold.
for business purposes.
They are weak to a single element.
In fact, without spending any money, let me show you how easy it is to get your your website up. Let's say I want to make a blog to go along with this channel that's of course educational and meant for students. I can pick the type of blog I want, and after putting in some additional information, you get to pick from tons of layouts that offer just the right feel for your site. Now once you're set up, everything is very customizable, so it's very easy to edit titles and pictures that give your site the personal touch that you want. They actually put this as the default, but honestly, I think I'll keep it. Then if I want to maybe make some money on the side by offering some online tutoring, it's literally 2 clicks away. I can then design a pricing plan that fits my needs and make the page look exactly how I want. A lot of what you'll need is built into their default settings. Then buying a domain, linking any payment methods, creating customized email addresses, and everything else you could need is all available on Wix. If you're trying to go really professional, you can even upgrade to a premium plan, which is used by professional developers to save time so they can focus on more important business matters. To get started right now, you can click the link in the description and join over 100 million people who have used Wix to create their own amazing websites. And with that, I'm going to end that video there. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and join the Facebook group for updates on everything. Hit that bell if you're not being notified. See you all in the next video.
Alright, well, we're doing pretty good.
This is every Minecraft thing that defies all logic. Here's why this anvil will never fall, or this sign will never break, even if it's not supported by anything. So this is this simple little piston contraption, we're able to completely break Minecraft logic. Now when the sticky piston retracts, it doesn't properly update the block that's on top of it, or the one that you attach to the pistons are. And the reason for that is because the piston doesn't actually think it's
and the
supposed
worst
to
part
work,
is there's
since
no
the obsidian's
cell.
keeping the slime blocks
I
from being
believe
able
he
to
hasn't
move.
done
And
it
as
yet,
such,
but-
the slime blocks aren't the only one that doesn't move, and we can get all of these
Could do
illegal
it at
blocks
any
that you see
moment.
here. Giving us one of the simplest ways to do update suppression, and one that still works in modern versions, might I add. We're not allowed to sleep in beds in the Nether or the End. That's just intentional game design. But it's intentional game design that I don't think the villagers were made aware of. Since if you get a villager into the Nether through whatever torture means necessary, and eventually get it next to a bed, then sure enough, you can get them to sleep in either of the other dimensions without the bed ever exploding. But you try to kick that same villager out of bed, it's gonna end one of 2 ways. And if you get your villager over to the other dimension and you notice they're not sleeping, keep in mind they'll follow the overworld time schedule. I guess they're just jet lagged or portal lagged. I'm just glad it's not actual lag. And while it makes sense to have floating sand and gravel when we're
Yep,
using an
there it
actual
is.
machine to suppress updates, when you see these out and about in the world, it makes a little less sense. In fact, the whole reason that these things give off particles when you're underneath them was because when Mojang was made aware of the bug that made these blocks generate in midair, they decided it was just easier to make it a feature and call it a cave-in. Which I guess is fair. I don't like doing extra work either. But they didn't add in the particles when snow layers do this either, so those make even less sense. Now, Beacon's a tough block to get. Not only do you need to kill the Wither, but you also need glass and obsidian, which are 2 blocks that you don't want to punch with your fist. But when you put them together into a beacon, then no matter if you use the
hopefully he
pickaxe or
doesn't
not,
do it
you're
twice
able
in
to
a
break that
row.
just the same.
Otherwise,
Always
there's
looked so
really
weird
nothing
to
I
me.
can
I
do.
would have thought that at
Okay,
least the
thanks, bud.
obsidian would mean that we need a diamond pick. But no, we're able to break this any which way that we want. Though for me, the way that I want might still be with a pickaxe. It just looks safer. Minecraft has its fair share of hazardous blocks. You would want to stand on something made of magma, that much makes sense. But then, why is the stone cutter safe? Now, if it was the old stone cutter texture, I would get it. There, the saw blade's completely enclosed. But here, it's completely out in the open, for everyone to see. And while there do exist some data packs to make this dangerous, those just make it feel like you're hurting yourself for no reason. Especially with things like dripstone spikes getting added into the game, I still never understand why Mojang has this block this way. Building with slabs is a pain. Not only does it take an extra crafting step to make these, but when you accidentally stack up a double slab like this, then there's no way to actually break the 2 slabs
No.
individually. Now, you can place them individually, but there's no way to pick and choose which one of these that you want to break. And personally, that's why I like playing with mods like this, so I can pick and choose my battles. Or break the whole thing if I really want to. There's so many ways that Mojang can fix this, it doesn't make sense that it's still in the
Whatever.
game. You can't place 2 block tall
Tails
flowers
are
that do
can-
decorated pots.
I can
or
go with
any
Tails for
flowers
not
inside
having
of
any
it, for that
XP.
matter. And
No.
while it's supposed to put
Oh.
one of the tiny flower pots on top of it and have it still look right, the truth of the matter is that even though these decorated pots are, well, pots, there's no way to put anything inside of them. Not water, not potions, not plants, nothing. It's just confusing. Why would you add in these new 2 block tall plants that you get from the sniffer in the same update, but you give them no way
I
to
wonder
be plants
at
inside
what
of the new
cost.
pots that came along with it? I don't know. Nobody likes it when you're ready for bed, then you're told that you can't sleep. And I'm not just talking about the message that you get when there's monsters nearby, but specifically this one. wrong, which is that the game's telling you the bed is too far away. No, hold on, it's close enough to click on. I thought I was well within my rights to assume I could sleep here. But no, I guess this is a special case. And considering the fact that no other block in Minecraft shares this behavior, it feels like an unnecessary attempt at realism, and then at the same time, effectively breaking the game's own internal logic. What does this pattern look like to you? Well, under normal logic, it really doesn't look like much. You can't even say it's a glass half full. It's a pool mostly empty. But because of the weird way that Minecraft's water sources work, over time, this shape is all you need to completely fill up this basin, and that's never made sense to me. Infinite water in a small pool like this is one thing. I get that doesn't make sense. But when you see that stretch to the limits here, yeah, it's just getting confusing.
Oh, I just realized
Fireflies are supposed to be in
cleansing
Minecraft, but aren't. And the
combines
reason is
the
that frogs would initially eat these fireflies.
ailment
But once
and mind
advanced
heal
logic
into
that
one.
fireflies are actually toxic to frogs in the real world, they completely removed the feature,
Man,
which isn't
they
ideal.
didn't have to
What if
nerf
frogs
it.
actually in the game? Slime,
Toss more
sure,
TP.
but also
I
magma
would've
cubes.
preferred if
And
they
maybe it's
just
just me, but the literal
kept
ball
us.
of magma seems a lot more dangerous than the fireflies.
Because
And
they
come
wanted
on,
to
it's
give
not even like
this
fire. And not
ability,
to mention the
I
simple
guess.
solution of just having the frogs not eat the fireflies and still adding them. That was totally on the table. But no, magma cubes. Which I guess keeps to this fantasy theming that Minecraft has, but it might have kept to it a little bit too far. Cauldrons by themselves already do not make a lot of sense. Like, why are you able to put a full bucket of water in a cauldron, and then when you fall in it, you still break your legs at the bottom of it? But this waterlogged chest, completely fine, even if it's 1 pixel of water. Or the fact that an enderman could stand in the water inside of a cauldron and not mind it at all, even though the smallest raindrop will just make it freak out and teleport away. But perhaps the strangest one is that
Back
even
to
though
the
we're not able to
tent
place
site.
water inside of the nether, if you
Come on.
place it inside of a piping hot iron cauldron, then it doesn't boil away. In
Good.
fact, it's the only way to have water in the nether. And at that point, it just seems like the cauldrons can't decide whether they do or do not want to be actual water. In science, perpetual motion machines are just a hypothesis. But in Minecraft, it's as simple as 8 rails placed together like so. Since by building a square of regular rails like this, you place a minecart on top of the slope, it'll continue to go around and around the loop, never slowing down. And to make things funnier, you put an entity inside, and that just makes the whole thing speed up. And speaking of speeding up, I'd be remiss if I didn't
Touch
mention the
controls
king
are
of
really
fast
weird.
travel in Minecraft, the ice boat.
And
Now,
they
ice
work.
boats have never mixed too well in the real world.
But
That's the
I wouldn't
Titanic on
recommend
that one.
playing
But
it
in
with a
Minecraft,
mouse.
if you just place down a boat in some of the slippery stuff and start
Why have they
paddling,
still
it's
not gotten the
ridiculously
horror
fast
buffers
speeds,
of it?
especially when we're
Thingy.
traveling in the nether. And then to make your ice boat
I
highway
literally
make
just
even
need
less
ice.
sense and make it cheaper, you can carve out holes in the ice like this so that you're only using every other block. And now I don't know what's harder to follow, Minecraft's logic or trying to follow this shot with a camera. At its highest level, Swift Sneak 3 is supposed to help you walk around while sneaking about as fast as you would when you're regularly walking. And on almost every block in the game, that's true, except for slime blocks. Since here, for walking, we might move at a pace of about 1.3 blocks per second. But when we then hold down the sneak key, we're moving at 2.2 blocks per second. Now, don't get me wrong, that's still not fast, but it seems odd to speed up the further you're sinking down into the sticky stuff. But as this user on Reddit says, there's really no reason to delete it. And even though I don't get it, I'm inclined to agree. Minecraft has its fair share of bad deals, but this one might have to take the cake. Since if you're using coal to smelt coal ore to get more coal, you're not only wasting smelting power, but you're also wasting a perfectly good coal ore. And really, you should have switched out the silk touch you used to mine this for a fortune pickaxe. That would have been a much better return on your smelting. Or if you're sick of this, just maybe go into your settings and turn off friendly fire. Credit to the person who already made that joke in the comments. Made me chuckle. This one makes it seem like Minecraft's having an identity crisis. At least its code is. Since while you are supposed to use a sword to break bamboo and cobwebs faster, it doesn't make much sense that doing that also uses up double the durability than it would if you just used a
Tell me
regular
that
tool.
works.
And considering this
There
has
you
been
go.
unresolved in the bug tracker since back in July of 2020, I don't think we have any hope of getting this fixed anytime soon anyway. So at that point, the question's up to you. Would you rather waste your time or your sword's durability? I guess when you put it that way, it seems obvious. So zombies and zombie piglins like to break these turtle eggs. That's not the weird part. The weird part is that when they stomp on these eggs, the particles that it gives off are from the chicken egg texture, not the turtle egg, which is a bug for sure, but a bug that's also been unresolved. And since both the chicken and the egg came first, Mojang probably just thought they could use this texture and not have to worry about making a new one for the turtle egg. You know, I mentioned that it makes sense to take damage from magma blocks. Well, that's still true, but what doesn't make sense is that when you sneak down on the magma blocks, then you don't take any damage. And I've heard a reasoning that when you're holding sneak, you're supposed to be walking more carefully on the stones of the magma. That's all well and good, but what's even more confusing is that when you go underneath a slab like this, visually, it still looks like you're crouching down. But if you're not holding that sneak key, the game thinks you're not, and you'll just apply damage the same. Are you familiar with the law of the conservation of matter? I think I am. I dropped out of high school. But to my understanding, you can't create matter where there wasn't already matter already. So in that case, it scarcely makes sense that when you kill a snowman, which would take 2 snow blocks to make, costing 8 snowballs, they can drop up to 15 snowballs on death, giving you 3 snow blocks. It just seems weird, though. I guess we are able to constantly mine the snow layers that generated their feed for snowballs anyway, so it's logic that might be consistent to the snow golems, but not to regular logic of science. The way that it's coded, leather armor keeps you from freezing powdered snow. But that's a broader statement than you might think, since really any amount of leather armor is enough to do the job. So by just having leather boots, you're no longer going to freeze in the entire rest of your body, even when fully submerged in the powdered snow. And at that point, it seems like a bit much. I get wearing these moccasins to be able to walk on top of the powdered snow, but to keep you completely safe from the snowy peaks, that might be pushing it. Especially when mobs that drop leather aren't safe by themselves inside of the powdered snow. And it just seems like Mojang picking favorites. Hiding the secret door behind a painting is old news in Minecraft, which might mean that you've never taken the time to realize just how weird it is that we're walking through a completely solid painting and coming out the other side. And not just paintings, signs, item frames, torches, all things that are completely solid in real life. In Minecraft, we can slide through them like we're made of liquid. That's funny, because even liquid gets stopped by something like a sign, making this all even weirder. Netherite is supposed to be the strongest thing in Minecraft. I mean, even if you drop the item in lava, it'll never burn. So why then is it not given the same resilience when it goes up against a cactus? Surely any item that you throw at the cactus, regardless of what it is, will just break on sight. Which is made all the stranger by the fact that if you were to take that block, not throw it into the cactus, but place it next to it, then the cactus just completely falls apart.
My.
He has a condition out, but we just can't take it. If you get an opponent right it off the cliff,
Yeah,
you'll take any
V3's
fall damage. That's not the
ability
weird part.
to
The weird part is that if you take a
attract
bow and ride it off
damage is good,
specifically
but
a
when she
49
can't
block tall
take it,
fall,
it's
then you'll
not
die of fall
good.
damage, and the bow breaks too. Now, that'd be okay if 49 blocks is the limit, but the fact that you're able to fall from over 50 blocks tall and still survive, then I don't get what's so special about block number 49. Or when you fall from a 114 block fall, then both you and the boat survive, but then when you get out, the boat will still break. And again, that's only block 114. Nah, who knows? Now, one of the cool features of Minecraft is that if you throw an instant health potion on a zombie, it actually hurts them instead of heals them. And vice versa for an instant damage potion. But following that train of logic, wouldn't it make sense for Generation instead works as poison on undead mobs? And for better or worse, this would somewhat make witches into healers when they throw out their poison potions. It would definitely add some stress the next time you see a team synergy in the dark. Minecraft's textures aren't always pixel perfect, and while 1.17 took big strides to correct some of those, this block went unnoticed. As you can see, the light gray glazed terracotta is not only a mouthful to say, but also has a deceptively frustrating texture. If you try to line it up, you'll notice that the pattern doesn't connect, leaving many players frustrated and confused at just how this slipped by, especially when the patterns are the whole point of glazed terracotta in the first place. The addition of stripped logs into Minecraft brought a huge shift to building, because finally we had something that resembled the texture of logs, while matching the color of the plank textures inside. Or at least, they mostly do. Since, if we were to line them up, it's clear to see that dark oak just doesn't fit up with the rest of the pattern. Which is a shame, since the darker shade for the dark oak texture would look quite nice. And while there might be points for changing this just for consistency, I will admit that Curtis stripped dark oak does look quite nice as well. Every now and then, Mojang will add in an item, but then it just flies under the radar because it doesn't get used. And for my money, I gotta say that one of those is rabbit stew. Because after all, if you take all the different ingredients that it takes to make a rabbit stew, just eat them separately, it will fill up more hunger than the rabbit stew does altogether. So either Mojang needs to change its
V3's back to being kinda weak.
or they're just gonna stay at the bottom.
Enemies are too strong and
Farmland has some
having
weird
her
restrictions that dirt doesn't. Mainly, it's not a full block, so we're not able to place
permanently
decorations on the
provoke
side. This is the reason why torches
enemies
and ladders don't go on the side of farmland.
is kind
which
of a
is
bad
weird
idea.
limitation, especially for the torches, but I guess it's understandable. Though, while those don't work, for some reason, signs do. And honestly, putting a torch on the side of your farmland seems a lot less crazy to me. But if you really want it, just type torch on the side of the sign, there. That's the closest you're gonna get. Chainmail armor has always been some illustrious item in Minecraft, because you can't craft it. But then, all of a sudden, Mojang goes ahead and adds actual chains to the game. But as far as I can see, even if you get your hand on a whole bunch of chain links, you're not going to be able to stitch them together into a chest plate. And for that reason alone, chainmail gets to stay as this white whale item that we only really get to use on PvP servers. And for those of us who mainly play in survival, I think it's kind of unfortunate. Look, as much as I love andesite, diorite, and granite, they're only really useful for the building part of Minecraft. because even though we classify these things as different stone variants, they're not actually able to be used for things like crafting stone tools. Or, you know what's even worse than that? We can't craft stone tools out of actual clean stone. Look, Minecraft's got a lot of different stones, and I think that's great, and I would love a bit more variety in how I craft my early toolkit. Plains biomes make for great locations for building. Just there you get lush grass, flat surfaces, and an overall nice atmosphere for your base. But there is one problem point you're sure to notice. Say you're placing the blocks as a foundation for your new house, laying them out in a row, only to have your flow interrupted by a measly flower. Since tulips, unlike the neighboring grass, have their own persistent hitbox, meaning we can't just place our blocks as we please. Which means most of the time we see these, they're just going to be a roadblock to your building flow. Banner patterns can be pretty neat when you put them to use in the loop, but as anyone who's ever played around that item knows, it can be pretty easy to lose track. Because for some weird reason, even though these are visual items, they don't actually have a visual indicator on the sprite, meaning you have to hover over and see that it's a creeper face. Folks, it only takes one look at the different banner fixed texture packs to see how cool this could be if we had a visual indicator. So for Mojo to do it, I think it's a no-brainer. Now, it's common sense that if you're on fire, water is the cure-all solution. I mean, even cauldrons uphold that fact. They aren't exactly for consistency. But if we all know that to be true, then I ask, how in the world does this work? As it happens, if you're on fire in a boat, you're able to submerge yourself in water and still burn the same. Stranger still is that you're still able to drown in that very water, even if it doesn't put you out. And folks, that's the definition of a lose-lose situation. Anvil should be one of the strongest blocks in the game. I mean, with a crafting recipe that almost requires a half stack of ingots, you definitely hope this investment could hold up. But apparently, even the smallest flower in the game can still break a block like this. As shown, you could drop an anvil in just about any decoration block in the game.
One of these walls isn't actually a wall.
And then, just as you start to understand that logic, it still manages to break this
And
dead
I made a
bush,
mistake in
making the
mapping
whole
because
thing
I am
even more
officially
ridiculous.
stuck
The
right
clouds are an
now,
odd remnant of
according to this
Minecraft's
map.
code. I'd even wager that most of us have turned them off by this point, since they just tend to get in the way of things. But before you turn them off for good, maybe check this first. You see, if we position ourselves right above the cloud coverage during a storm, you'll notice how it even rains and
What? Okay, that sucked. Oh wow, I managed to get the flawless shell.
See, if we position ourselves right above the cloud coverage during a storm, you'll notice how it even rains and snows above these clouds. So if you got yourself in a Elytra and you want to see it rain above the cumulonimbus,
Yeah,
it's a cool
nice.
view, albeit completely nonsensical. Dispensers in Minecraft are able to do a lot of the same capabilities that we can do with a right click. And while this means that they can literally place and refill water buckets at their own notice, if they're next to a cauldron, they're not actually able to fill them. Honestly, I don't know how this hasn't been added in. The way it is, it just seems like we're limiting this feature for really no one's benefit. It's not game breaking, it would just be kind of cool. And it could definitely add some fun machinery to your next potion farm. By having skeletons and zombies burn in the daylight, Mojang found an ingenious way to encourage players to explore during the day. But while that mechanic is a solid piece of game design, it does have a few odd quirks as well, such as how all of these blocks can't stop a skeleton from burning, but the cobweb does. Now, I get it. Things like a chest or a transparent wall, they're coded as such. But a cobweb, that just doesn't make any sense. And if you ask me, if it lets light get through, then it should still apply to the sun rays as well. Over the course of Minecraft's history, it was made so that hay bales could actually damage your
Alright, let's change the party a
That being
bit.
said, hay's the only soft block we got in Minecraft.
I think Applin would
It's
actually
weird
be
that other
really
blocks
useful.
such as sponge, snow, and wool don't damage your fall damage. I mean, if you're giving me the
The
option,
call line
I would
ability
rather
will
block
be
of
useful
snow or wool than
whenever
anything.
someone powerful
The sound
shows
effects
up.
for these blocks already sound so much
Those
softer
guys
than
are
other options.
expendable.
And it's just a natural evolution of the game. The cauldron might
I
be
know
the
that's
only
animal
Minecraft
cruelty,
world.
but
And while we've talked about so many shortcomings before, this one recently caught my attention as well. Even though we can place a whole bucket's worth of water in this thing, it still doesn't allow for the Riptide enchantment on tridents, which would be fine if Riptide also didn't work on waterlogged blocks. But as you can plainly see, even standing on the virtual puddle that we have on top of the waterlogged chest, you're able to launch yourself just the same as standing in the ocean. Now folks, it's news to no one that lava is hot, except of course if it's just a few drips of lava. Because according to Minecraft, those are completely fine. Now I get it, these are particle effects, they're really not meant to do much. But based on my limited time spent in school, lava hurts, and if you get it on you, it's gonna do some amount of damage. You know, this might be more of a pain to add in Minecraft than necessary. It would be a good wake-up call on your mind to be careful where you tread if you got lava drips burning into your scalp. Minecraft is famous for some wild and wacky hitboxes. And if you don't believe me, look no further than the minecart. In this scenario, the cart cannot go past along this rail when the block is placed like such, which seems a bit strict, but I guess it makes sense. That is, until you break that block and place one here instead, and then the whole argument's out the window. Just like platform 9 3/4, this cart just magically phases through the wall. And that's stuff for a bugger like me to wrap my head around. Anyone who's ever got stuck in a cobweb knows that these things are absolute pain to go through. And not just for us, but for most entities in the game. Except, of course, projectiles. Yeah, for some reason, arrows and such are able to go through these things without fail. But I guess if we look at the bright side, it does
What
make
the hell's
cave
the
spiders
Elsa?
a lot easier to take out with a bow and arrow. And for that part,
I still don't have everyone memorized.
The reason it isn't there. With the 1.16 update, Minecraft of course added
Oh,
in
she's
two
the magician.
equivalents,
Right.
the Crimson and Warp Step blocks. And sure, it makes sense that these wouldn't burn to a flint steel or a furnace, but why can they be used as fuel in a campfire?
Yeah,
As
the
you can
Elsa
see,
is still
crafting this item, it's
important,
possible
so-
to use the nether steps in kindling, just like the regular logs. Even though they don't burn in a regular game flow. But if you're really looking to cook up a steak in the nether, I guess this is how you do it. So, Minecraft has its fair share of prickly blocks. Now, when you're starting out, this makes sense. But when I got a
Friend
full
of
piece of
Moby.
netherite armor on my body, I don't get why I'm still getting hit by thorns. Granted, I don't think the barrier here should be just as simple as wearing armor. For example, if I'm wearing a leather helmet, I should still get poked on the rest of my body. If I've got diamonds on my chest, legs, and boots, I don't know why I'm getting hit as much. You know, it made traveling through these forest biomes a whole lot less of a pain. I know we don't like to talk about it, but if you actually crunch the numbers, Minecraft is ripping you off. If you look at it, it takes 6 planks to craft 4 stairs, even though a stair is 3/4 of a block. Where the extra parts go, I just don't know. I guess Steve is a bit of a wasteful person. And while again the stone cutter does dampen this blow, that's not an option for any wood items. And folks, there's nothing I like less than getting stolen out of my hard-earned materials. I'm going to be a decent bit of help if you need it, and at the very least, lower the graveyard shift at your local village. So just round up the iron, set it up like this, and the job will be done. Or maybe not. You see, if the pumpkin isn't placed last, the golem will not spawn even when it's in proper formation. And in fairness, this is likely a holdover from the older versions where you couldn't even place a pumpkin unsupported. So, as such, the code never accounted for the possibility. Of course, TNT explosions can pack quite a punch. That is, until you put these underwater. Then that demolition dream fizzles out. But apparently, since Minecraft turned to prime TNT to entity instead of block, we're able to put other things like sand into that same hitbox. And by doing that, the TNT will explode just the same, even if it's at the bottom of the ocean. It's absolutely a weird feature, but if you want to get rid of ocean ruins, this lack of logic might be your best solution. Now, if you've ever been outside of Winter Wonderland, then you definitely know that snow is pretty good at falling from the sky. That is, unless you put it in a layer, in which case, I guess it's never going to fall at all. Now, this is another case where Java Edition is actually different to the Bedrock counterpart. See there, snow layers actually do fall and are affected by gravity. And when you see how it works there, it makes sense. It would look a whole lot nicer than just floating snow in the sky. Trust me. Even though Minecraft is a sandbox, that doesn't stop the game from having unspoken rules. And if you ask me, some of those are just bizarre. Take this ladder for example. Now if you make a path land underneath the wall and then place a ladder, you can see it works just fine.
Will
Though if you
really
place
need
the
the
ladder
newer
above the
equipment.
grass and then try to make it into a path
Mitigate some of
it's
this
a no-go.
damage.
Why that order exists, I've got no clue. But at least now we've got the proper
It's just way
arbitrary
too
way
much.
to solve it. Mission in
Right now,
Minecraft
though,
has
it's
long
way too
been
inconvenient
overpowered.
to
So much so that Mojang decided to
do
nerf
any
the treasure
farming.
loot tables back in 1.16 for most of the fish farms. However, even the nerf version of fish farming is still pretty overpowered. You see, if you were to take a random water bucket from anywhere in the world, be it a jungle, the ocean, or even a rain-filled cauldron, and then you place that water source wherever you like, you can still fish infinite cod and salmon out of that one pot. I'm not complaining, but it is a bit strange. The Frostwalker enchantment is quite a bit of power. If you got Frostwalker 2 on hand, then you can tame some of the biggest oceans and put them in your control. Well, that's all well and good. Don't expect to show that same kind of dominion on a waterlogged slab, because sure enough, even though these things have water in them, it's in the name, you're not able to Frostwalk them. Now, from a game design point of view, I can see why this happens. But folks, I think it would be pretty cool to see some ice stairs. At the very least, it's worth playing around with. When it comes time to take on the dragon, me and my friends like to do it together as a bit of an event. So we go to the end dimension, take down the dragon, and then boom, whoever lands the last hit is the only person to get the achievement. There's other achievements in the game that don't require you to be the sole person to do it. But all of a sudden, when it comes down to killing the dragon, no, it's just whoever got the last hit. And really, it would be better to see this group effort regarded as such, instead of an every player for themselves mentality. Steve's ability to crawl into small spaces is a definite game changer. But with that newfound ability, Mojang intended for a few different limits. Like, for example, how you're not able to move from a 1 block tall space to a 0.5 block tall space using the slab. After all, the player isn't exactly a contortionist. But if you place snow layers in the stack like such, we can just happen to get in a space as thin as the slab would allow. So if the caves aren't claustrophobic enough for you, this might do the trick. In Minecraft, fire safety is a pretty simple concept. If you got something hot, you don't want to put things that are flammable next to it. However, that's not always the case. See, with the magma block, even though the name might make you think that it is made of lava, or rather magma, it doesn't ignite any other blocks around it. In fairness, I guess it doesn't set you on fire when you stand on top of it, but that's weird too. Who knows, maybe the wood blocks around it are just holding shifts so they don't take damage anyway. So you go over to craft yourself a new set of iron tools. But in your hubris, you accidentally make a second pickaxe. So you put it in the furnace. Except regardless of the state the pickaxe is in, you'll always get 1 nugget back in return. That seems pretty cheap. And instead, it might make sense that the amount of nuggets that you get from smelting an item is based off the item's quality. Because you can't tell me that all of that iron just melts down to 1 single nugget. It's just not possible. The Ender Dragon is a destructive boss. Truly, unless the block is dated to the end, the odds are that
TT
it
never
destroyed.
increases.
It won't make sense that the dragon could break down your cobblestone tower. Why are ender chests on that list? After all, they're made of obsidian. So the logic would think it's pretty safe. But as you can see, when we put these next to the dragon, this is not true. But hey, at least if she breaks this chest, your end is still well and good up in the cloud. Loyalty as a concept is a really cool enchantment for a trident. But I guess it turns out that the trident is only so loyal. Because as you can see, when you throw it in the end void, that thing's never coming back. You lost it. Now look, I get why I'm not able to come back from the end void. But a magically enchanted trident, I at least expect it to put up a fight. But as it stands, this just makes tridents a whole lot less worthwhile when you're going around the end islands. And for that point, I'd rather just leave it in my overworld. One of the best parts of the Caves and Cliffs update's first tab is the addition of axolotls. I mean, they're certainly the cutest feature, that's no contest. But what these water wolves have in the ocean, they don't exactly match on land. And you'll see as much if you beach one, they move pretty slow.
Right, I can just circle around this guy.
And it'll move surprisingly fast speeds. Why this
But whatever, I'm
happens,
gonna fight
I've got no clue. It is pretty hilarious, so I'm fine with it not making sense. As time has gone on, nether bricks have gotten more
Check,
and
they
more
give
variations
everyone their
to play around
proper-
with, which is good, it helps break up the monotony.
They're weak to all elements.
Like, you find out where a cracked nether brick doesn't actually mean you're in a nether universe. I mean, these places, much like strong molds are pretty run down. Engaging by the fact that we have to smelt nether bricks to actually make these, clearly heat is the defining feature. There's nowhere you're going to find more heat than in the nether. Composers in and of themselves are kind of a rip-off. I mean, to put in all this plain material and just get one bone meal, it seems like a raw deal. But while that's a different discussion for another day, it's actually weirder is that you can't compost bamboo. Now folks, in real life, bamboo can absolutely be composted. It's a natural fiber. But here, no chance. It's just panda food. If you want to make your bamboo farm into something to get you bone meal, you're out of luck. Living in Minecraft is a funny thing. Obviously, it takes some serious muscles for Steve and Alex to carry around stacks and stacks of raw materials, but what's even weirder is comparing the strength of Minecraft's other inhabitants. Take the drip leaf plant, for example. While it will bend in a few seconds to an item as light as a feather, a literal anvil can fall on top of it with no problem. And then, weirder still is that if we stand on top of that anvil, it doesn't bend. Just us by ourselves? Yeah, you get the picture. Anyone who's ever had to mess around with a bunch of different dyed blocks knows the pain in this one. Because as much as we want to, we're not able to actually dye different dyed blocks. There are way too many times where I've gone over to the crafting table, wanted to take my little dyed blocks and turn them into something I can actually use. But no, I'm not able to do that. And as someone who likes to mess around with a bunch of color in my bases, I would definitely love to see this get changed around in a future update. When you're traveling, nothing breaks your stride quite like water. Sure, if you have a boat, you're just fine. But on your own, you tend to move a lot slower than the water source points. Then, if that's the case, why is it that when you waterlog a ladder, faster than a regular ladder? No joke, the game somehow combines the water swim speed, climbing speed, and ladder, makes the operation all quicker. And while the science would likely disagree, we'll take any excuse to get the sky a bit faster. Every now and then, society likes to debate back and forth on certain topics. Whether that's the color of this dress, whether it says yay or moral, or of course, what came first, the chicken or the egg. Now I think that Minecraft might have one of its own. Given the two truths that gravel falls when it's unsupported, and the lantern cannot be placed without a roof support, then answer me this. Does the gravel hold up the lantern, or the lantern hold up the gravel? Really, I've got no clue either way. A long-standing tradition of Minecraft actually craft 9 of a different material into a bigger block. And for that reason, it's always a surprise to me that we can't do that with the netherworld block. Lord knows that I can take 9 of these and actually craft them into a netherworld block, so why can't I undo the process? Way too many times putting the netherworld block in the crafting table and getting surprised as to why I don't get my netherworld back. I've got a feeling I'm not the only one who does that. While Minecraft clearly isn't going for realism with its graphics, there is one tidbit that cracks me up whenever I see it. And no, it's not just that Minecraft's square and rectangular mobs cast brown shadows, though yes, that's weird too. As people have pointed out, these shadows can be cast through solid rock slabs. And perhaps the cherry on top, it's possible to have those shadows appear on top of light sources like lava. And folks, while there's a longer list of weird things, I guess they do give Minecraft its visual charm. After using all of your sponge to dry out the area for a guardian farm, now you know that you've got to dry out the things. And for that, you got a couple of different options. Furnace or warm places like the nether. While that all makes sense, I don't quite get why it's the case that if I put a fire right next to a sponge, it's not going to dry out. Look, these things are hot enough to light me on fire. You're telling me you can't do the same to Patrick's best friend? That just doesn't make sense. Everyone who's ever played on an SMP knows that one person who never wants to sleep. And the problem with that is that phantoms who spawn, they won't just spawn to go out for the first with insomnia. Rather, everyone on the server at night is getting hit by these cars. That is a real pain in the brain. It definitely isn't fair. And it makes how annoying phantoms are to deal with 10 times worse. Which, to be honest, is the last thing the phantoms need in the game. Now, waterlogged stairs are a surprisingly helpful addition to Minecraft. Because, as you'd expect, the stair allows water to pour out one way, yet the next step will prevent water from moving out the back. Though, if that's the case, this cobblestone generator doesn't make much sense. Since flowing water is required to make cobblestone post-generation, how does the cobblestone form out the back, which should be sealed by this step? But go figure, it still converts to lava just the same. Turtleites are perhaps the most fragile thing in Minecraft. Truly, just about anything can trample these, whether that's us, maybe zombies, or human bees. Yeah, that's right, bees. Now, I get that these bees are pretty chubby by most standards, but I thought their wings make them a little lighter on their feet. But apparently, according to Mojang, mixing your honey and steam farms together isn't going to happen anytime soon. Which, if you say that out loud, that part makes sense. Minecraft has been around for a while, so as that goes, many features have been added in, and then just sort of forgotten. Chief among those has to be the furnace and on-cart trains. As you can see, they can't go around corners, they can't go up or down, or even change directions without disconnecting. Honestly, Sailor makes it still in the game. Well, I doubt that Mojang will ever take a look back to the old piece of code this is lying in. Until that happens, I guess we just have to keep up the hype train. Blast resistance is a funny thing. And for example, let's compare an iron block with an iron chain. Now, clearly, both are made of iron, but the block costs over 7 times the iron ingots that we need to make a chain link, which might have you to believe the block should be stronger than the chain. But as you can see, that just isn't so. Both having a blast resistance of 6. So if you're looking for a solid iron wall around your base, maybe opt for the chain link beds instead. Now, what are the many different features for Regarde ces gars.
Shit. Oh my. I need elements to deal with this guy. I could have also instead used Evelyn's healing doggo, but okay. That was awful. Oh, I didn't mean to bring Alma. Interesting.
case, maybe opt for the chain link vents instead. Now, one of the many different features for a dispenser is that it's able to place pumpkins. Granted, the intended use here is that it's supposed to make a snow golem, but using a trick like this would just have it straight up place the pumpkin. Which is cool, but it begs the question, why can't it place other blocks? Something makes me feel like the dispenser's being held back by Mojang. So, for the time being, I guess we'll just have to live with pumpkins getting placed automatically. Oh, and shulk boxes, those work too. Insta-mining is one of the simple joys of Minecraft, which is why it can be frustrating when something breaks your stride. And while plenty of things to do that, nothing bugs me more than cobblestone. As it is, cobblestone takes longer to break than normal stone. And maybe it's just me, but it seems odd that a block that's clearly already broken and smashed up takes longer to break than a solid like regular stone. Unless Steve adds some concrete or paste to cobblestone after mining it, I think it just doesn't make sense. Gold tools might get the least amount of playtime in a Minecraft world. After all, without a gold farm, these things are pretty expensive to craft. And when you do, you barely get any durability anyway. But this might be its single biggest embarrassment. As you can see, every tool in Minecraft can break its respective material. Wood breaks wood, iron breaks iron, netherite breaks netherite, except for the gold one. And folks, you know it's bad when the gold ore is an impressive gold performance. When the 1.14 update rolled around, Mojang added in a chunk of different workstations. But now that we're a few updates past that, it turns out that the fletching table is still the only table that doesn't have a purpose. I mean, you can use it to employ the villagers, so I guess they can use it, but we can't. I don't know why we don't make the new potion variants arrows in this actual block. That seems like a weird missed opportunity, at least until Mojang or the community can figure out what the heck this is supposed to do. Trapdoors and ladders go hand in hand, so much so that whenever you put a ladder in your basement, it's almost a guarantee that you have a trapdoor on the next floor to seal it off. Though, strangely enough, they find it more common than you think. See, because we're able to climb a trapdoor like so when it's above a ladder, that means if you make a pattern like this, you're fully capable to climb up multiple trapdoors in a row.
The longer the
Obviously,
fight
you can't
goes
climb
on,
all
the
trapdoors
harder
by
things
themselves,
will be.
So the whole thing gets confusing. It's no
And I
secret
know
that
that's
Steve can
an
work up
obvious
the
thing.
appetite, but our empty hunger bar only tells a fraction of that story. And when it's given the chance to eat a
Say,
soup
but-
or stew, the player not only slurps it down, but physically takes chunks out of the bowl, which, I'll admit, would be funny if that was the last we saw in the bowl. But since we get it back, I think the chewing particles are a bit of an oversight. And maybe it's worth giving Steve a bit more manners in the future. Breeding animals in Minecraft is a fairly simple concept, and thankfully so. But the strangest bit about the parrots and the bats in the game might just be how fluid the mechanic is. As it's laid out, even if you have a wall separating the two mobs, you can still feed both of them and cause a baby to be born. Well, I've got no interest in diving into the many questions that raises. I guess it just proves the old adage true, huh? True love truly knows no bounds. With another update in 1.16,
Alright, it's good against a lot against pretty much all ailments.
Substitute for crafting stone
Yikes.
tools, furnaces, and even brewing stands. Which is nice, but it's not a complete replacement. For some reason, unlike cobblestone, blackstone can't be used to craft pistons or certain pieces of redstone equipment. Which I get it, the nether's an
Focus
exact
on binding the arms.
machinery, but I also don't get
And
only
using
to
its
have an
attack.
assignment. So why not give Blackstone a proper welcome to the crafting side? Fences are a staple of Minecraft build. So
Are you
we're
kidding
familiar
me?
with the limitations. That said, it makes sense that not us nor any other mob can jump over the fence block. I mean, it would make a pretty lousy wall if we could. But while you can't
Of course
jump
it
over a
starts
fence
off
wall
with that
by yourself,
attack.
if you add a carpet on top, making the whole thing taller, then you can clear the jump. Don't get me wrong, I like using these wall and carpet combos in my builds. But do I understand them? Not so much. Minecraft bricks have been around for a long time, and with that story history dating back to the early version of Java Edition Classic, the texture has changed a bunch. And while it's clear to see that it's done a lot of growing up, the texture still has one issue to see. That is, if you look at the bottom of the block, you'll notice that some of the bricks don't line up. Rather, since the texture is repeated, there's not a logical consistency of the brick placement, which is a small complaint for sure. Mildly
I guess the
infuriating
team I went
nonetheless.
with
And that,
was the
YouTube
best.
thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right, have a good one, alright?
Alright, you know what? I'm going to bed. I will kill this guy.